So today's scripture reading will be found in Joshua 1 from verse 9. It says, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys are doing great. Hope you guys are doing well. I've not been so consistent this year. I'm really trying my best to be consistent. There's just so many things happening. I'm dealing with so many things. I'm trying my best to find the balance, sometimes find the strength to do these videos. I really apologize. Please do forgive me, and please do keep me in your prayers. I'd really appreciate that. But we are back with another video, and I hope you guys are doing great. So today we're going to be talking about courage to be who God has called you to be. It takes a lot of courage to be yourself. It takes a lot of courage to believe in yourself, to believe in who God says you are, to believe in what God says you are capable of. It takes a lot of courage. It's very easy to do everything that everyone is doing. It's very easy to fit in. It's very easy to be like everybody else. It's very easy to settle for people's opinions, what they think of you, what they think you should do, the limits that they put on you, the disqualifications that they put on you. It's very easy for us to even limit ourselves based on whatever is happening in our lives, based on our own perspectives, based on our own limitations. But it takes courage to pull yourself out of that and say, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, because greater is he that is in me than the one that is in the world. It takes a lot of courage to believe in yourself and have that mindset that God's ways are higher than mine, and his thoughts are higher than mine, and I cannot settle for mere person's thoughts, and I cannot even settle for my own thoughts, because my own thoughts even limit me. It takes a lot of courage. So courage is defined as the ability to do something that you know is very difficult or very dangerous, but because you do not limit yourself, because you do not disqualify yourself, because you believe in yourself, because you believe in who God says you are able to confront that situation. You are able to confront that difficulty and say, you know what, you and I are going head on head, and I'm definitely going to be the winner. And even if I don't win, victory still belongs to Jesus, and it's also the ability to confront agony, pain, danger, uncertainty, or intimidation. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's not the absence of pain. It's not the absence of intimidation. It's you saying, okay, fear, take the back seat. I'm going to take the driver's seat, and I'm going to show you how we're doing this, because I'm not about to settle for whatever this is, because this is not me and this is not what God has created me for. But it takes a lot of courage. It's easier said than done. This whole confidence, high self-esteem, believing in yourself, it's easier said than done. It's an everyday job, and God has called us to be courageous. The children of Israel were called to live courageous lives. They were set apart. They were unique. They were not supposed to be like any other nation. They were called to live courageous lives because they were not supposed to fit in. They were supposed to stand out. They were children of God. God was their king. However, they found themselves desiring to be like other nations because they did not recognize who they were and the God that they were serving. They did not know the God that they were serving. They did not know the God who took them through the wilderness, because if they knew, then they wouldn't be asking for another king, human king rather, because other nations had a king. And we find the story in 1 Samuel chapter 8 you can read from verse 1 to wherever it ends. I'll just read from where does it start? From verse 5. Or let me start from verse 4. It says, "So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, 'You are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have.'" God was their king. They did not need any other king because God was their king. It takes courage to be different. It takes courage to accept being different. It takes a lot of courage. But most of us don't like being different. That's why we end up just conforming, to the norms of society and compromising our destiny and compromising who God says we are and compromising what God says He can do for us and through us, because it takes courage to be different, to believe different, and to live differently. It takes a lot of courage. One man I believe will teach us what it means to be courageous from the Bible is Jesus. Jesus was courageous. Jesus had such a high self-esteem and so much confidence. Every time I read the Gospels and I look at how Jesus would interact with the Pharisees or people that did not believe in Him, man, it didn't do anything to Him. It did not faze Him. You never heard them saying that Jesus did not wake up the next morning because He was not feeling well because of an opinion that someone made about Him or because they didn't believe in Him. Jesus moved on with life. Jesus had so much confidence, guys. Like, every time I read it, I'm like, how did you do it? How are you able to be who you are, be who God created you to be, even though you are God yourself, and live up to your truth, whether people believed it or not? That took a lot of courage. That took a lot of confidence, knowing who you are, knowing the God that you serve, even though He was God Himself. Jesus had a lot of courage. And how do we see that? So 3 points in how we can tell that Jesus had courage and how we can actually learn from Jesus. Number 1, Jesus never tried to convince the Pharisees that He was the Messiah. You never found Jesus now having a pity party and having to draw a draft and a final to explain to the Pharisees, to say, but you've been reading about me for all these years, all these generations. You knew about my coming. I'm here. You don't believe me, and begging them to believe Him and trying to prove to them that He's the Messiah. Jesus did not do that. If He did that, we'll probably still be waiting for Jesus to be crucified and raised again for Him to fulfill the prophecy. But He did not have time to convince people about who He was. And most of the time we find ourselves neglecting our dreams, neglecting our promises from God, neglecting our purpose, because we're still trying to convince people that this is what God says, this is who God says I am, this is who God says is. God did not call you to convince people. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that Jesus called a meeting to try and show these people that He is the Messiah. And it's not our job to try and convince people that this is the promise that God made, that this is who God says I am, this is what God says I will do. It is not your job. Your job is to believe in who God says you are, what God says He will be able to do for you. That's it. Number 2, Jesus was not moved by people's opinions. Let's read Matthew 13. Matthew 13 from verse 55. It says, isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? And aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? 56. Aren't all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all these things? They took offense at him. People will always try to attach you to your background, to your family situation, to what you have done, to what you are going through, to what they think you're capable of, to justify why you can't be great. And sometimes we ourselves attach ourselves to our background, to our societal standards, to what we think we are capable of, to justify why God cannot use us and why we cannot be great. Jesus was not moved by people's opinions. He never tried to change their minds. He never tried to seek their approval. And it's not for us to change people's minds about us. It's for us to change our minds about ourselves. It's for us to see us how God sees us, to look at ourselves in the same view that God looks at us. And the last point is, Jesus lived up to His truth. Whether people believed Him, whether people supported Him, Jesus lived up to His truth. He never compromised honest truth whatsoever. And for us to live courageous lives, we need to live up to the truth of the Word of God and the truth of what God has promised us and the truth of what God says about us. So how then do we build courage? How then can we be courageous? Building courage is an everyday thing. You need to build your courage, your confidence, your self-esteem on a daily basis. You never get to a point where you feel like you know it all, you have it all, you believe it all. It is an everyday journey that you need to take with God. Number one, you need to know who God is. You need to know that God says he'll provide, that God says he's a promise keeper, that God says he's a healer. You know, you need to believe that God is consistent even when everything around you is not consistent, even when you are not consistent. But believing that God is consistent, you know that you have hope, or you are putting your hope on something that is greater than you, and someone that will not disappoint you. And that has a way of just reviving us and helping us to have that courage to get back up and face life. Number two, know who God says you are. If you need to Google scriptures on who God says you are, that you're wonderfully and fearfully made, that you are his masterpiece, that you're a royal priesthood, if you need to Google those scriptures and put them on your wall or write them down, but you need to meditate on those day and night. You need to familiarize yourself with that. You need to get used to hearing that, because that is who God says you are and what God thinks about you. You know, so you need to take all that in, you know, even though you don't believe it, but there will come a time where you will start believing it. Number three, you need to confront your fears, your insecurities, your pain and your trauma, you know, because these are the things that sometimes hold us back from actually being courageous, from actually being ourselves, because of the insecurities and the fear and the trauma and everything. So you need to confront those things so that you are able to live courageous lives. Number four, you need to change your mindset. Let go of what you think of yourselves and take in what God says about you. This literally sums up the three steps, if I should put it in that way. You need to let go of what you think of self, you need to let go of what people think of you, and you need to start taking in what God says about you. And you take that in by knowing who God is, what God says about you, and confronting your fears and your insecurities, you know, and changing your mindset so that you may be able to test and approve what God's will is. You need to renew your mind so that you may be transformed and know what God's will is. It all starts here before you can actually start seeing change in your mindset, your behavior, the way you talk, the way you think, the way you act. It all starts here. So you need to change your mindset. And the last one is you need to stop disqualifying yourself. I think it's human nature to disqualify ourselves, because God called Moses to go speak to Pharaoh, and Moses said, I cannot speak. You know, when God calls you, he already knows that you can do it. He already knows you because he created you. He knows you. So why are you telling God something that he already knows? So stop disqualifying yourself and trying to find every reason as to why you cannot and why you can't achieve it, because you will not do it. Start qualifying yourself and saying, if God called me for this, he knows very well that I can do it. So it takes a lot of courage. I don't take this lightly. It's an everyday thing. All these 5 things need to be done on a daily basis so that we are able to live courageous lives and be who God has called us to be without seeking any approval from anyone. So hope this word blesses you. Hope you guys have a beautiful day, a beautiful month, a beautiful week. If you have not subscribed, please do subscribe, like, and share. Much love from me. Have a blessed one.